Before we begin, we want to let you know that some sensitive content is discussed during this episode, including that of sexual abuse. So please make sure to take care of yourself while listening.
Welcome to Healing Generations, a podcast creating a dialogue uplifting the importance of healing, strengthening, and supporting our communities, and that addresses the disparities and inequities in communities of color. Healing Generations is brought to you by the Healing Generations Institute, a collaborative initiative of the National Compadres Network and the Brotherhood of Yelders. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on our new releases.
Buenas, this is Cisco Gallardo with the Healing Generations podcast, Yelder edition. I want to say what's up to all my gente out there. Thank you again for listening. One thing I want to ask as a favor, if you could share our podcast out or go to wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, wherever you go to listen to your podcast, give a review, let people know about it. The more reviews we get, the easier people can find it. So I just want to put that out there to each and every one of you. I want to say, wherever we're at, if it's good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're listening to this, I want you to take a moment. Take a moment, close your eyes. Because every time we do this, we have to think about the four directions. We ask for permission. We ask our ancestors, hey, we're doing this and we want your blessing. We want your guidance, So I want you to think about it in that way. But we'll face this east direction in your mind. The direction of the men, where all the men in your life, your grandpa, your dad, even if you didn't know them, think about them, the lives that they had, the beauty in their life. I want you to think of your tios, your hood dads. I want you to think about your brothers, your sons, your homies. I want you to think about all the men in your life. We want to bring their blessings here with us. We want to remember them, the struggles that we have in our community. And we also want to remember the pride, the beauty, the culture within our community at the same time. We want to remember the men in that way. Then I want you to turn to your left. As we're going to our left, I want you to think about all our brothers and sisters and our gente that are LGBTQ, They struggle. They put up with a lot of misunderstandings, a lot of different things. But I want you to think about the blessings that they bring. I want you to think about those lives, that they touch. I want them to feel good about themselves, not to feel different or less than. I want them to feel a sense of belonging, however they do it for themselves. I'm proud of them, for doing what they're doing. It's good, good for the advocacy, because there's a lot of young people out there that they're afraid to come out, and I want them to feel good about their lives. Our people should not have to hide who they are. And as we face that west direction, I want you to think about all the women in our lives, our grandmothers, our mothers, our daughters, our nieces, our co-workers, all the women in our lives, even our hood aunties, our hood moms. I want to think about them. All the blessings that they bring to our community, the nurturing ways. We want to recognize how women have to work so much harder than we do as men. We want to think about that. We think about the struggles, but we also want to think about the blessings too. All the beautiful things that they do for us, and the pressure put on them too. We want to recognize that. We want them to be a part of this conversation. And then as we turn again to the left, we go to the north direction and we think of all our ancestors, all those ones that came before us, the ones that put in work, that fought for our rights, that sacrificed a lot for us. We want to think about them. The ones that paved the way for our gente, regardless of who you are, to go to college, to learn, to get good jobs, to be a part of society. We want to think about all our ancestors that did that. The shoulders that we're standing on right now. And we want to think about all our elders too. The elders in the community, the ones, a lot of times you see older people, they're struggling, Nobody talks to them. They're lonely. We want to celebrate them, you know. We want to celebrate our elders in our community. Whatever wisdom they give us, we want to think about them in that way. And if you have grandparents or older parents, I want you to think about them. Call them. Ask them how they're doing. Maybe bring them something, go home, bring them a burrito or something and some tacos, something, and just talk to them, Hear those stories, those lessons from their past, things that we could still learn from. And then I want you to turn left again. There's that spectrum. When we turn, there's a spectrum of the oldest all the way to the youngest. We want to think about those children that are not even born yet. Those children that are little babies, the hope that when we see a little baby, like, how they're going to be, what's their personality, all those different kinds of things. We want to pave the way for them, that they could have a beautiful life. We want to think about them when they're newborns, when they're toddlers, elementary school, middle school, high school, and beyond. We want to think about all those children. And we got to remember, they're not just a hope, but we have to do our part. We can't put everything on their shoulders. I want you to think about that. At the same time, we celebrate their life, their giggles, their laughter, They remind us how innocent we once were, And then I want you to touch the earth. Think about Mother Earth and all the beauty that she brings us, the food, the water, all these different things, these blessings. And it's kind of like this balance, we want to recognize the earth and do our best to take care of her. Think about our impact. Think about things that we do that are wasteful and things like that. We want to think about her. And what can we do to celebrate her? How can we make our neighborhoods a little bit better, on behalf of the children and out of respect for the elders? And then we want to put our hands up to the sky and think about the sun, the hope, the light. Every culture around the world recognizes the power of the sun and how it stands in for just the power of nature, the power of the universe, all that kind of thing. We want to think about the sun. But what I want you to think about is the hope that it brings. Every day that sun's going to come up. No matter what we do, that sun's coming up. And it's a reminder that we have to carry on. We have to do our best every day, At least acknowledge, we're moving forward. We're doing something good. And then I want you to think about in the middle, about creation. Maybe you don't believe in anything, but I want you to think about the beauty of life. Just that word, the miracle we are, the miracle of our lives. We want to think about that and not waste that opportunity, So with that, I want you to take a deep breath. All right. Thank you, relatives, for taking that little time out, time just to acknowledge the directions and acknowledge our lives, just the part that we play in it. We're not alone. We're a part of this ecosystem. We're a part of this balance, and that's really what healing's about. So I want to talk a little bit about healing. We have a special guest here. I'm going to introduce her, but, I just want to say a few things. The work of healing that we do in the community or that we're really inspiring to see is people that have lost a lot of stuff, lost a lot of things in their life. When you get that stuff back, you appreciate life 100 times more. And, a lot of people that I know who are really strong had to go through a lot of adversity. They had to go through some struggles, and it makes them better, And I always tripped out when I got older. I would meet people who never had to struggle at all. They had everything they needed. Some of them recognized it and some of them didn't. But, I always tell people, don't confuse your life with my life. Don't confuse what you went through versus what I went through. All of us have our own story. And I think it's important that we recognize those stories and try to inspire other people through our own lived experience. So with that, I want to welcome Angela. I met her through a project that we're trying to help out, called the Action Project. And I think she has a very unique story, and I wanted to share it with all of you, So if you could do me a favor, think about your own life, your own thing as we get into the story. But I'm going to go ahead and give her a chance to introduce herself. Angela, can you please share a little bit about yourself, your family, your background, your journey up to this point.
Sure. I just first want to say thank you, Cisco, for having me. This is an honor, and this is just another outlet and another way that we can reach. And I know my story is not unique. I know that, many people are going through similar things, but thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for putting me on the podcast so that people can hear, that, other people are going through similar things. And it might be different in many ways, but the trauma is still there and the healing is still possible.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, my name is Angela, Angela Flores Wise, to be exact. My maiden name is Flores, and I am now married. We've been together 15 years, been married 12, and it's been quite the journey. So if I start at the beginning, if I may, a little bit about where my family comes from. So my mom is an immigrant. She came when she was young. She came from Chihuahua, Mexico. And my dad was born here, and they met very young. They met very young. My mom already had a son, which is my brother. And my dad was already involved in the neighborhood, and he was in and out of the system in juvies and camps and prisons by the time, I think he started at 14. And long story short, him and my mom met. He was 17, she was 18. Then eventually he went to prison. They married there, and they had conjugal visits, and I was conceived at one of those visits. And my dad wasn't there when I was born. He was still in prison. And eventually he came home. I think I was one. And my mom and him had eventually 2 more girls. So I have 2 more sisters. We pretty much are 2 years apart. And we're very close. We're very tight. Eventually, my dad went back to prison, came back, and then and I laugh because that's a little bit of a trauma response, because what's coming up next is not funny at all. My dad was from the Emmet, and if you don't know what the Emmet means, it's the Mexican mafia. And I say that only because so you can get a picture of what the foundation and what the setup was for me from the gate. And so you could understand like a little bit of what I'm actually healing from and what this process has actually been. So I also get very emotional during this time because I am not healed, right? I'm not cured. I'm also still very much in the process of a lot of this stuff, and acknowledging this stuff and processing this stuff and going through the healing process. So, if I laugh or I cry or I'm kind of just stuck or stunned, these are, part of the healing for me. So in 94, my father was 25. He was set up and murdered. And so that was a hard time for my mom. We were very young. I was 6. My sisters were 4 and 2. And, it was a very hard time for my mom. And my mom went, she started drinking heavily and then eventually using. And little by little, things got worse. Obviously, things just progress. And from there, I think is where it started to really hit me. I think I was starting to get a little older, starting to see the partying more often in the house, the characters coming in and out, and the environment. It was a really dysfunctional, and we were poor. We lived off of welfare and a little bit of Social Security that we got from, my dad. My mom didn't work. She couldn't work. So, things got progressively worse, and we grew up. So I think by the time, I want to say 11, I had already lived in the same areas, but at least 16 places by the time I was 11. So I went to a lot of different schools in a short amount of time. And when I mean a short amount of time, I think the first 2 years that my father was gone, my mom was so unstable that we lived in at least 15 places in 2 years, in garages, in small apartments, and wherever somebody would take us in my grandma's house, at my other grandma's house, like wherever we can fit. So we were bouncing like crazy the first couple years. We were just so unstable. When we finally settled in Echo Park, and that's close to downtown Los Angeles and Chinatown and all that. And that's basically where I, adolescence and grew up I grew up there, went to school there, and we basically just settled there for a while, for a long time. By the time I was 11 or so, the partying was pretty crazy. So the house itself was the party house. So it wasn't any, wasn't safe anymore. It was active. It was active, and I mean in every sense of the word. And, the homies outside, the partying inside, the dealing in the basement, like this posting up in the front, like it was active. And we were young, and all the kids, all my sisters and brothers, we lived there, and it was our home. And it was so normal to us because that's what we knew. That's all we knew. And eventually I don't know, I think I was 11 or so, I grabbed my mom's stash, went to my neighbor's house because the neighbor's mom used to kick it with my mom. So I kicked it with her daughter. And she's a little bit older than me. So she kind of knew a little bit, more. But eventually we started doing their stash. And I was off and running since then. And it wasn't until about 14, I was already like heavily using meth. And I was stuck. I was gone. I was stuck. And just to give you another little idea of how the whole setup was for us, like I'm very tight with my sisters to this day. Like my sisters and I, we've been through so much trauma together, and through it all, we have really only had each other. And, my sister, who's 2 years younger than me, had 2 kids by the time she was 15. I love those kids, but it breaks my heart because she didn't really get a childhood. She hustled and worked and did what she could to provide for those kids, but she was a kid, and that messes with me sometimes when I think about it. But I'm not like the type of person, I've never been the type of person to look at the cup like half empty. I'm always like it's half full. And that's how I always been. But, through my process, I kind of been thinking about it totally different. Like, I don't even think about it half empty or half full. Like now I'm in a place where I'm like, the cup is refillable. Like I can get this cup filled to the top, flowing if I want to, if I choose to. So it's a whole different thing for me, a whole different thought process, a whole different way of, it's a new perspective for sure. So anyway, back a little bit, just so I'm going to wrap the trauma up. I got pregnant when I was 14 and I chose to have an abortion. And that was a very hard thing for me, but it was also very easy in a sense that I was scared. I was 14. I didn't have anything to offer the kid. We were already 10 living at the house that we were living in with nobody working a full-time job, with no real income, with no real stability. So I made that choice, and that was hard. And I don't really share that a lot with everybody. And it's not because I feel guilt or shame. I accepted that part. I accepted that decision. I let it go. I gave it to my higher power, and I have moved on from that. But I'm sharing it now just so that you can understand the stuff that I, constantly have to, think about. That's one of those things where like it took me a while to accept and heal from, but eventually I feel like I made the best decision I could at that time. And I accept that now. And I don't have to, feel guilt and shame over it anymore. I let that go. And that was a process, and by the time I was, again, just so you get a little bit of, understanding of what I'm healing from and healed from. By the time I was 17, I had already been raped twice. I was already on the streets. I'm heavily on drugs. And then by the time I was 18, I'm in a domestic violence relationship and I'm pregnant. So I have my daughter. And through this all, I wanted to finish school. For some reason, something in my head, I wanted to have a diploma. So I did. I went to school. I went to a secondary school. And for some reason in my head, I felt like my worth or if I could get a diploma, that meant something. That meant, you know what I mean? Because nobody in my family had one. And my mom, she dropped out at 9th grade. My dad was in and out of prison. So I ended up graduating 2 years late on stage with my diploma with my little sister. And And I was very proud of that. I already had my daughter. And I think a part of that too was because I had my daughter that I wanted to have my diploma.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe looking back on it now, I'm thinking that was part of it. So 18, 20, I move out with the baby daddy, 20 years old, trying to have my own place, apartment. And I couldn't keep up with it because I was too busy chasing drugs. I was chasing a high. I couldn't work. I did work at first, but you know how that goes. I tried. And eventually I let baby daddy go. The abuse got too crazy and I couldn't take it anymore. And again, my daughter comes into play. So what I think of now, like a higher power always being there and working out for me despite the decisions I still made during that time. I know that my daughter somehow plays a part in the way I looked, in the way that I viewed life and things still. But at that time, a lot of those things were based on I wanted to protect her. I wanted to, So I don't think I would have left him if I didn't think she was in danger. Because for some weird reason, we think, a lot of women think, and this is just my opinion, that it's okay if you do it to me, but not to my kids. It's okay if you hurt me, not to my kids. And you protect your kids, and we forget that we are their protection. And if we are being hurt or if something happens to us, who's going to take care of them? And I think about that now, but then it was like, it was all about protecting her. It wasn't about me. And now I realize that that's another God shot in a way that helped me get out of that situation.
Yeah, you saw the hope. She was your hope. And that's a good motivator.
Yeah. And, and I want to say that I got it together after that, but I didn't. I went from one relationship to another. And, it was just as bad. It wasn't physical, but it was emotionally abusive. And it was, it was one of the worst times of my life. I was so strung out and I was losing my mind. I think I was losing everything. I was losing that little light, that little hope, because I was, if anybody knows how it is to be, in the disease of addiction, like you are a slave to the disease of addiction. You are in cuffs physically and mentally to the one more. And I couldn't cope without it. I couldn't get out of bed without it. I couldn't shower without it. I couldn't go outside without it. Sometimes I wouldn't go outside at all. It got really bad. And, I started doing a lot of things. I was in and out of jail. And another thing that I always saw as God's shot is that I'd never been to prison. And I've gotten a couple, since I was a juvenile, I was caught up a little bit. I was on probation, in and out of jail. And for some reason, I would get, either DA rejects, or I would get like little things where I'm like, what? Like, that's crazy. And now I'm like, that's God.
Yeah.
That's God.
Absolutely.
And, there was times where I would make it home. I talked this guy into giving me his car, and he was like, here, you can have it. And all of a sudden I'm driving this car, but I don't even know how I made it home sometimes. There was times where I'm in the garage and I wake up and I'm like, how did I get here? That's God. So now I see things way different and know that there was always something taking care of me, even when I couldn't take care of myself. And even when I was trying, and every time I asked for help, he sent it, not in the way that I wanted it, not in the way that I asked or imagined it, but in the way he knew I needed it. And that came in the form of my daughter. That came in the form of getting DA rejects. That came in the form of not having to go to prison, and other people being put into my path through organizations like the one Cisco talked about. There have been a lot of people that have been put in my path in certain times in my life where they made a real lasting influence on my heart. And not because of what they said or what they did or their title, but because how they cared for me despite knowing the shit I was doing. So I was going to this organization, I was on probation, and I was still using, and I had a counselor who allowed me to do my homework so that I could graduate on stage for my diploma, and she allowed me come to sit in her desk every day if I needed to use her computer, use her stuff, whatever, study, whatever I needed to do. And she allowed me to come to her office and sit there every day if I wanted to. Eventually, she put me in boxing at that organization. And boxing and her at that time saved my life. And another time in school, you know, I was dealing. I was walking around school with a strap.
Dang.
I don't know. I was in high school and I thought I was the shit. I thought I had it all together. I thought I was big and bad. And there was an impact counselor who saw right through me.
Uh-huh.
And it wasn't, he's like, she's not big and bad. She's hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And he took me in. He helped me start a peer group that other kids who thought they were big and bad, who were also just, you know, hurt.
Yeah.
We were meeting because I wouldn't go to class. Like I would go to school because I was making money at school and it was fun, but I wasn't in class. So what he did instead was, you're not gonna be out there making money, jumping the fence, leaving and coming as you please. You're gonna start a group here, and you're gonna be accountable, and you're gonna lead the group, and you guys are gonna share your guys' stuff. And and that was another person in my life that another God shot. And of course, at the time, you're so young, you don't think these people are sent by God or your higher power or something, a force greater than you, right? Mm-hmm. But now when you look back at it, like, who else would have sent them? Like, how else would they have seen right through me? Like, they don't know anything about me. Like, how else did this work? And yeah, like, it's been like that for a while. And when I turned 24, well, right when I was like 20, 21, I met a guy. And we were using together. We were running around. And at that time, I said, I need to give my daughter to my aunt because I'm in we were squatting in my house because my house had been, this is, you can look up this story too on the news. Christmas morning, 2010, my house got lit up like Christmas because it was Christmas. Mm-hmm. 5 people were hit. One young 18-year-old was killed, and 2 people are serving life sentences for this. A lot of people's lives were impacted. Older gentleman is physically paralyzed from the waist down, and my family was traumatized. The kids were traumatized. My little brother has PTSD till this day, so fireworks, loud booms, whatever, he's freaking out. I would be lying if I didn't say I don't have a little bit of PTSD because of it. And so many lives were uprooted. My whole family abandoned our house after that. And actually, some of the neighborhood petitioned us to be kicked out because we were just so active in that area, in that house. And we were a house behind an apartment building, a 4 complex. And that 4 complex was, all of our family. Or our comadres, or our tias and our tios. Like, we were all affiliated in some way. Either kids had babies with each other, or somebody was with each other, or the cousin moved down there. So it was a little hub. And we got, the neighborhood petitioned us out. So we had nowhere to go. We have no money. So long story short, everybody leaves. But I was so prideful and I was so stuck that I squatted in my house. Because it was my house, it was my home, it was where all my family lived. It was where, good times, bad times happened. It was part of me, and I couldn't leave. I was so full of like, F them, they're not going to kick me out. F them, they're not going to come run up and run me out of my house. And me and this guy I was dating, we squatted there with a shotgun, a pit bull, and we lived there for 3 months.
Wow.
And at that time, I knew, I was like, my daughter can't be here. It's too dangerous. There's no electricity anymore. There's no hot water anymore. Like, I can't have her here. So I made the choice to have her live with my aunt right before she started preschool while I was there. And I knew that was going to be temporary, but I just didn't know how long. I didn't know when I was going to be able to get out of this part of my life. So when I sent my daughter there, it was really hard.
So was that one of the moments in your life where it was like a aha moment?
Yes, another aha for me. And I think I had like little glimpse of those ahas throughout my life.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's times where I'm like, even though this lifestyle was normal to me, I grew up in it, like it's like it felt like some part of me felt like I don't want to live like this.
Mm-hmm.
But I did because that's what I knew. And I think that the drugs helped me kind of morph and kind of live in that, because I don't think without it I would have had the heart to. Like I wouldn't have the heart to be walking around with the strap. I don't think I would have the heart to beat up freaking random girls. I don't think I had the heart to beat up my sisters. Like I don't think I would have the heart to me and my mom go at it physically, or to jack somebody, or to go run. Like I don't think I would. I know now I don't have the heart for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that because it was so like something that you did in the neighborhood, it was something that I did and everybody did around me, that the drugs helped me, gave me that courage to be part of that nonsense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it was definitely gave you that false sense of courage, right? Because I could relate to that. Well, a lot of times people meet me now and they're, oh, you're a big teddy bear, but get me all juiced up and
oh yeah,
and acid and everything else. I'm not the same person. And when you do that day in and day out, you're a different person totally. When you're in a calm state, sober state, you're just different. And a lot of people don't realize that. They kind of look down on that struggle, but it's real. So how in all that did you start? Was there a particular moment where you're just like, I need to heal from this?
Yes, we're there right now, Cisco. So in the story, so I give my daughter to my aunt, and me and this guy are squatting in my old pad, and he's actually literally losing his mind. Like when I say losing his mind, he's having psychosis. He thinks I'm a witch. He's holding me hostage. He's this, he's that. But something about dude was different, and something about me was different. Mm-hmm. And I finally told him, like, we need help. We both need help. And the only way we're going to be able to really say we love each other and care about each other is if we go separately and go get the help.
Mm-hmm.
And it was that moment where I was like, okay, this is real. Like, if I really care about this person, I can't be right here with him, watching him literally mentally deteriorate because of what we're doing. And I felt like that was a wake up, another aha. So, the way God works, he knew he wasn't going to go willingly. So he got busted, and he took a program when he got busted. Because now I'm alone and Heal's gone, I went to rehab. So God worked again in his ways, and he knew we were asking for help. He knew that that's what we were praying and asking for. And he did it in the way that he knew we needed it, because we weren't good. We didn't have the strength to do it ourselves. So from there, I got, 3 days, and I wish I could say I stayed the whole time. I didn't. I left and I went to go live with my aunt who had my daughter. And from there, that very moment, my aunt set boundaries. She set rules. She said, this is what it is. This is what it ain't. And if you don't like it, and she was my last hope. And so I did it. I did what she said. I was there and I tried everything to make sure I was, a part of my daughter's life. I wanted to be the person to enroll her in school, be there to pick her up, be there to drop her off, pick her clothes out, and all this good stuff. And what my aunt did for me, which I can't thank her enough, with my little bit of money that I got working and from welfare, I gave to her to put away. And it was like I was paying rent, but she was putting it away for me so that I could have a down payment for my own place. And that really meant a lot to me. And at first I was like, I have never had anybody in my life first set boundaries, right? And have a structured place, have a safe place. And the first week that I was there was really difficult because I didn't hear helicopters. I didn't hear sirens. So where I lived on, if anybody's familiar with Dodger Stadium, I lived right in front of Dodger Stadium, that street. So now it's been Scully. I lived on the street right next to it. and that main street is Sunset, and it turns into Cesar Chavez. Well, that main street, all you hear is buses, sirens all night, all day, helicopters. So when I moved with her, it was so quiet. It was so quiet. It was weird. I couldn't sleep for a few days. And I didn't realize that how noisy and how busy, not just the environment was, but my life, my head, my heart, my spirit. I didn't realize how much I had going on until I was in a quiet place. And it was a calm place, and it was a structured place, and it was a loving, safe place. And we ate dinner at the table, and we cooked, and we watched TV, and I was like, what? This is new. This is different. This is nice. But it was foreign, right? So even though it was all these good things, it was still foreign. And I think it was another aha for me, because this was like, I want this. Right? But at the same token, on the other side, I wanted it, but I didn't know how to get it, and I didn't know if I deserved it. So that's where the healing had to start. It had to start with, okay, you want this, you deserve it, and you can have it, you know? And so those things started happening. I started having more examples in my life. I got introduced to Narcotics Anonymous. You know, I tried to put some clean time together. I eventually, got into some healing practices in Narcotics Anonymous. I worked some steps. I, got a sponsor.
What was the hardest part in that journey? What was the hardest part when you're, especially when you start a program and you're starting to work it? What steps of that was the hardest besides getting there?
Okay, so getting there was easy because, I could come in, pretend, smile, woo, woo, woo. But the hard part is trusting people, trusting that somebody that's at the podium sharing their experience or their strength or their hope or whatever, that they're telling real stuff. So trusting them was like the first step. Like, I don't know, this guy looks kind of sketchy. I don't know if he's clean. I don't know. And then you look around, like somebody has 20 years. I doubt it. So you start, finding ways to get yourself out of there, to put a separation. So first it's like, okay, going in there and forget about if they're telling the truth or not. Can you just get there and freaking listen and maybe stay clean for a day, and then another day, and then another day. But when it comes to the actual working the steps with the sponsor, again, it's that trust, because now you're getting very vulnerable with somebody. And I think for me, the first time it got really real, where like all my mask came off, was the fourth step. And that's a step where you kind of go through all the stuff we're talking about right now in depth, and you write those things, and you reflect on those things, and you talk about those things with another person. And some of this stuff is like that I shared and wrote were things that I've never shared with anybody, and the first time you're sharing them with somebody is very, very healing in itself. It's scary. It's a lot of, masks are coming off. You're vulnerable. But at the end, the freedom that you get from it, from leaving my sponsor's house, from her sharing or her saying, you know what, me too. Or her saying, I'm so proud of you. Or you still deserve, even though you did X, Y, and Z. Or I still love you no matter what. Those are the things that are like part of, the healing for me. It's that leaving there, like you go in there, you're scared, you're tripping, you don't know if you should trust this person with your deepest, darkest secrets. And then you just take a deep breath. You ask for courage and the strength and the wisdom, and you just let it all out. And when you let it all out, it's like, honestly, I feel bad because it's kind of like you're throwing up on somebody, right?
Yes,
you're like throwing
definitely.
up, and then you're not just throwing up what you ate last night. You're throwing up 30 years of trauma, So you gotta be, at some point, you gotta be very careful, but you gotta be very grateful that somebody's willing to take on all your throw up. Like, real talk. Like, it's a lot of stuff. And, and if you're coming in and you're deciding to get clean and do some steps and you're, 60, imagine how much you're throwing up, but again, so it, healing is not a destination, in my opinion. It's a process, it's a journey. So, even though I got to that point where I was able to, be vulnerable and share a lot of my, deepest things. And one thing that they say in the rooms in Narcotics Anonymous is like, if you don't share your secret, secrets will basically kill you in the dark. And they die in the light of this, when they're exposed to the light, they die and you're free from them. Right. But if you keep them, and as long as you're keeping them, you're dying slowly with those secrets. They're killing you. They're killing you because you're holding on to them, their weight that you don't need. But even after you threw up all this stuff, you're still living life and you're still human. So there's still things that throughout your life after that are coming up. So you gotta there has to be a spiritual maintenance, right? It can't just be a one-time shot. I told her my whole 30 years of life trauma and I'm done. I'm here. I arrived. So that's what Narcotics Anonymous had done. It helped me get to a place where I felt acceptance and I felt love and I gained some insight. But spiritually, I started talking to a God of my understanding. And I'm not religious. I don't bang any religion. But I do very much believe in a force greater than myself. And if anything you got from whatever I said today, it's that if you ask for help and you really from your heart are hurting and dying inside and you don't have the strength or the courage, ask for it.
Yes.
Ask for it.
You got to put it out there in the universe. So one thing that I struggle with, and I work with people struggling with, gang impact, drugs, all those kinds of things my whole life, pretty much. And one thing I really struggled with was just feeling worthy of it all, even when I was doing good, I was I still, in my mind, I remember the first time I bought a car, I was so guilty, do I deserve this? I see people struggling, but what am I and it took me a while to say, it's all right. It's all right that you have some nice things here. I mean, not that it was a Mercedes or nada, but it was mine. You know what I mean?
Check this out. So when I got clean, everybody in my family, not everybody, but a lot of people, and my mom especially, was you think you're too good. You think you're better than us now. So my early recovery was a little tough and little by little. And I didn't invite her to a meeting to share an anniversary with me until I was 5 years clean. Because part of me was she's judging me. She's this, she's that. And when I would invite her, she thought that I was trying to pressure her into getting clean because she still uses to this day. And so that was tough for me. But eventually I was you know what? I'm not better than you guys, but the truth is I'm doing better. And if you can't handle that or you don't love me enough to accept and be proud of where I'm at and what I'm doing with my life, then I don't need you in my life. And that took a lot, a lot for me, a lot of courage for me to tell her that. My mom was very abusive to me when I was a teenager, in her active drinking and using. And it was a lot for me to stand up to her and say, I don't need you if you're not going to be supportive or at least just freaking be there. You don't have to say shit. Just don't make me feel bad about doing better. And me and my husband, he's been clean now, I think going to be 12 years, 13 years. We bought our first home about 3 years ago. And it took my mom and this broke my heart and I know it's crazy, out of everything I've been through, out of everything I'd shared, out of me and my mom physically coming to blows, all this stuff. What hurt my heart, I think the most, is that my mom didn't share anything about being proud or didn't come visit my place, didn't come see my place, nothing for the first year. And I was heartbroken because I was looking for validation. Right. And I think eventually I prayed. I asked God, I said, Why do I feel like I need her validation? Why do I feel guilt? Why do I feel survivor's guilt?
Mm-hmm.
Where a lot of my sisters and my mom's been homeless for I don't know how many years now. I feel like it's part of survival's guilt. Like you feel like, why did I get all this and why didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
How come I deserve it? Or how come they don't have some of the nice, or how come she doesn't have a home? Or so
Mm-hmm.
you get on this wheel, this hamster wheel of like feeling unworthy, undeserving.
Mm-hmm.
Like why me, not them? And it can get to you. It can be very destructive. But I think that's another way of, and I'm just going to use this word because it can, you can use it in any other way. It's the other side of you, the destructive, the self-sabotage side of you, who wants you not to feel good about where you're at, like your successes, because in a way it's my disease saying, come back, come back. Because when I feel low, when I feel unworthy, when I feel all these things, I want to mask those things. And that's normally what I would do is use.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of that like cycle, right, for me. And I recognize that. And now that I recognize that, I'm like, shut up. Don't talk to me like that.
So in that process, I think a lot of times, like I think this is an important question for you. Like a lot of people, I feel, have misconceptions about healing, where you need to start, what you need to do. If you had to answer that question about what are some of the misconceptions about healing, like somebody listening right now, either they love somebody who's addicted, or they themselves are struggling with it, hiding it, doing whatever they can.
I think the first thing is to think like not to take, if you're somebody who loves somebody who's going through it, not to take things so personal. At the end of the day, everybody's looking for this one thing. And I know it sounds cliche, but at the end of the day, we're all looking to be loved.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that sometimes because we're so close that we miss that, right? And I think that one of the misconceptions for me would be like, oh, you have to do therapy or you have to, find Jesus. Like that wasn't my story and I didn't go those routes. But if it works for you or it worked for you, then, more power to you. But the other thing is pressuring or like somebody to get better is not going to work. It's leading by example. It's if you want somebody to get better, how can you get better to be an example? If you want somebody to do well, how can you be an example to them? It's not about telling them, just like kids. Just imagine that we're all children still. Imagine that we're all because what happens is that we've been traumatized at a certain age and we've been kind of stuck there, right? We haven't really grown. We got older, but we didn't really mature. We didn't get emotional intelligence. We didn't get all this stuff. And we're kind of stuck there. So we're just looking for a model. We're looking for a model. We're looking for love, unconditional love. We're looking for guidance and support, not for somebody to down talk to you, somebody to mistreat you, somebody to take advantage of you. We're looking for love. And I think the best way to show love is to be an example of it.
Definitely. You got to be the light.
Yeah.
When it gets down to it, you got to be the light. You got to, a lot of things that you talked about really remind me, of the teachings, and I want to remind people of that. There's this idea that we promote, la cultura cura. In that idea, we talk about cara and corazón, your face and your heart. A lot of times what we portray to the world is a mask. We don't,
100%.
we have to build that balance between our heart and our face, our mask that we have on. We have to build this relationship. And in that relationship, there's these values that we have to build. One is just that first one, having dignity, feeling dignified. I know when you're struggling with that, you probably didn't even feel like a person in a lot of ways. There's that. And then there, the guilt that goes along with that. But at the same time, with that dignity, you you want respect. And people feel like, oh, you're not respecting yourself, or you're not respecting other people. But respect is one of those words. It's very elusive. How do you respect yourself? You have to feel dignified. Like you said, you have to feel loved. You have to feel wanted. You have to feel protected and welcomed and all those things. When you don't, you kind of mask it between other things. And then we have this other part, the corazón, where we talk about trust and love. It's very hard to love without trust. Mm-hmm. Trusting yourself, trusting that other person is really loving you for the right reasons and doing what they can for you, and you doing the same, and all the different kinds of things. But those four teachings, that is difficult for people to grasp. And what I appreciate about your story is that in hindsight, you're looking back, but there were things that kept you going and you recognize those things. Some people say that's resiliency. You were resilient in those situations, but resiliency is still, you have to work at that. It's not some magic potion that comes in. It's a series of things that where you start to see the light. The more you work, you start to say, okay, I'm a little bit better. I remember one time I was walking home to this halfway house and I was thinking to myself, I just want to run right now. I just want to go. Fuck it. I don't even have to go if I don't want to. But then I thought of all the people that I would disappoint. My teachers and my mom and people that loved me and poured good things into me. That was more important than me giving up. Mm-hmm. And that was a pivotal moment for me. Like, it just taking responsibility. Like, it's not just me. People love me. People, they want the best for me. Why don't I want it for myself?
And I think that's a hard thing to swallow because a lot of us have big, good hearts. We're sensitive. We're loving. We're caring. We're protecting. We protect those around us. We protect those we love. But when it comes to ourselves, for some odd reason, we feel undeserving, or we feel like we're not important enough. We don't deserve that love and same protection. And I think that's where it has to start with, if I do this for X, Y, and Z, I need to also be able to do it for myself. And if anything, I need to be able to do it for myself first. Because I shared with you earlier about, I don't no longer see the cup half full. It's, you can pour into it. And it's that cup that flows out that you use that extra flow for your loved ones, for your family, for your husband. But the cup itself is for you.
Yes.
Don't be giving everybody sips of your drink when you haven't took a drink. You haven't, have been spiritually fed. You haven't been physically active. You haven't, today my routine in my life is so different because I view it, the cup, I think I visually see the cup. Is my cup full? Like, am I freaking so thirsty and my cup is, going low and my energy is low. And when I think about the cup, I think about my energy. I think about how I feel about myself. I think about my physical, my health. I think about all these things. And if all those things are okay, then I'm okay. I can be around people and give them light, right? I can give them some of my flow, my overflow, my energy, my time. But if I'm constantly giving somebody from a cup that's not full or flowing, I'm going to constantly be not balanced. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to feel good. I'm going to feel like I'm being spread very thin, or I'm losing my patience with, somebody who didn't do anything, but for some odd reason I'm acting out, or have road rage all of a sudden. Like, I'm acting out of character, or I'm acting in these ways and these behaviors because I haven't been taking care of myself. And I think that comes too with, like, people don't think they deserve to take care of them. They think it's a selfish thing. And I want to say that it's not. It's one of the most loving things you can do for yourself and for people you love, is to take care of yourself.
Absolutely. So tell me, how did you get from that, where you're trying to change your life, to where you start helping people? Like, what was that transition? I mean, where did you go from all the things you were facing to say, you know what? I want to help people. I mean, I didn't think I would ever work with people. That wasn't I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wasn't really sure, but I would go to these groups. We had this circle. We started this. There was a bunch of young people from opposite neighborhood who started this. They started meeting because some of their members got killed pretty brutally, and they were looking for a way out, and they were like saying, what can we do? And they reached out to me, and I wasn't ready for it. Of course, I'm like, nah, I'm good. I'm doing my own thing. But eventually, I said, oh, okay, I'm gonna check it out. It was it was a difficult decision, but I did. I went in there, and for some reason, the kids listened to me.
Yeah.
The younger people, I wasn't very old at the time. I was still young, in my 20s, early 20s. And kids listened to me, and I thought, well, maybe this is something, And because people often say, I'm going to work with people because they think it's easy. They think, oh, I'm going to work with kids. It's so easy, man. You just get paid to play.
Oh, yeah.
But you also, you know what? All the funerals I've been to in my life for young people, or going to courtrooms, or doing those things, like, it hurt my heart, but I'm trying to be their light at the end of the day. I just want to be a part of, and I don't want to give up, and that's one of those things. But what was that pivotal moment for you where you're like, who gave you that chance to say, look, I want you to talk to people?
So remember the woman that I talked about who let me go to her office and do my homework.
Yeah.
She helped me get through high school. She helped me get my diploma, basically. I ended up calling her my godmom. So she had been in my life for a while. She helped me get through probation. Luckily, she knew my probation officer because I had tested dirty.
Yeah.
And she was like, look, let me work with her. Let me get some time with her. I'm going to put her in boxing and let her test again and see how it goes. So she helped me stay out of, systems, other, stuff that I could have been caught up in too. And she had that little space for me that allowed me some quiet time, some rejuvenation time that I didn't really see then as that, like how I see it now, and a safe place basically. And she knew what I was into. She knew the things that I was. Sometimes she's like, you don't look good today. Like, she knew I was high. She knew sometimes, but she accepted me anyway. And there was one day where she was like, no, you got to go home. You look like shit. Like, you're not going to stay here like that. You're not, like, you got to go home. And so, that like door being open for me helped me. And eventually, so, I'm a client there. It's an organization, and I'm a client there. I'm going there. I'm working there. I'm boxing there, and I get clean. When I get clean, they have a position open, and I said, F it. I did my resume, and I had little, job things. I worked at the post office. I did some medical billing for my grandma, and, I did some things, and I did some fraud shit too when I was working. So I had like a lot of things going on, but I had some experience. And eventually the director, he saw my resume. He was like, I want to interview her. And the crazy part about it is the reason why he wanted to interview me because he knew my dad. So my dad actually used to be a client there as well. And they're actually from the same neighborhood. So he interviewed me. I'm very chameleon like, so I can, from the streets, we can do that. Once we got a little like movement, we know how to put on the act, put on the show, put on the mask, ready, rock, action. Like, I can do that very easily. I can, go into different spaces, talk to different people. That was part of my survival for many years. So I got that locked. So, but with this was easy because like there were so many like natural connections and like very easy to do. And like, so I got the job and it was just like admin work. So just like filing and blah, blah, blah. And then a year went by and I was so involved that like I helped with the front desk. I helped with people coming in. I knew a lot of people from the neighborhood. I grew up in that neighborhood. They moved me up to a case manager. And from there, I just knew like, okay, I want to be the person that she was to me for somebody else. And I actually worked under her for that case management position. And I worked under her for 2-3 years, I think. And eventually I wanted to do more. I wanted to see more. And I moved on to a different agency. And each time I did different positions, but each time I knew that I wanted to work with people who were struggling and people who had obstacles and people who are oppressed and people who just needed a break and people who like were just hurting. And for some reason, like I was like, I'm going to be a therapist. And I went off. So I went off and I went to this other agency in El Monte. And it's a great agency, but I ended up being a program assistant for like a mental health program. And I saw the therapist and the therapists were stressed out, man. So I was like, nah, I don't want to be a therapist no more. But I still want to work with people. So how do I do that? Like, I didn't know what to do or how to do it, if that makes sense. But I knew that I wanted to be involved in making an impact and influence people's lives because I had a lineup of people in different phases of my life who did that for me. And I had just had this like passion, this spark, and I can't explain where it came from or why. It just was always there after that. And so I left. I wanted to go to school because I thought, school is the answer. If I go to school, I have more opportunities to be involved in, places and peoples and things that I can actually be an influence and an impact on, people's lives. And then I was like, I'm going to work in juvenile hall. Then I'm going to work here. So I just never really got locked down or locked in anything because I didn't know where my experience or where my influence was needed. But I bounced around a little bit. And right now, I should be finishing up my associates in sociology in August. Yeah, at the end of August, I should be done. And so this whole time, I'm like, I need to go to school. I need to figure out what I want to do. And I believe it or not, again, I prayed. I asked for guidance. I asked for strength. I asked for light and support, and just for the courage to continue on to the search for something that's like for me. And then Joe calls me. And I want to say like literally like a couple weeks after I had asked, my power for that guidance and for.
Well, where did you meet Joe?
I met Joe through Narcotics Anonymous.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So he calls me and we still have like a lot of friends that, we know like ties. So we see each other sometimes like at functions, birthday parties and stuff like that. And we bumped into each other at a kid's birthday party, a mutual friend. And he's like, what are you doing these days? And I was like, I'm in school, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, okay. And he tells me a little bit about the program. And I'm like, that's great, man. I'm so happy for you, blah, blah, blah. And then like a week later, he calls like, hey, are you interested? And da, 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 da. I'm like, of course I am. And I jumped on and it's just been that. But, again, like it's one of those things where if closed mouths don't get fed, you know what I mean? Like ask for the guidance, and look, honestly, sometimes I ask exactly what I want. And that might sound a little bit like self-centered and a little bit selfish. But if it's in his power to do so, he will do so. And if he thinks that it's right for me, he will. So sometimes I ask exactly what I want. But then you got to be careful to be careful what you ask for. So sometimes I just ask for the guidance because, or you know what I mean? Because sometimes what I want is not right for me.
Sometimes, what I ask for? I ask for just help me understand what's happening right now so I could get an idea of what I need to do, because I think that's part of it too, is just understanding where you're at, and really kind of wrapping your mind and everything around that issue or problem, whatever it is. I want to first off say again, I really appreciate you coming on, telling us your story, sharing those hard things, but there's somebody out there right now that's listening that is struggling with the same thing in some way, or they know somebody.
For sure.
And, I feel like, again, this is an opportunity for people, if you really find yourself in this situation, you got to do that. You got to acknowledge what's going on, and you got to try to understand that issue, try to understand what's going on with you, and then create that movement, right? You got to create something. Something got to go.
If I could say this, Cisco, this is really something that helped me. Like, I've been through a lot. I've seen a lot. A lot of things have happened to me, and I played a part in a lot of those things that happened. But I don't think I ever, and I think this is something that might be a little different. And if it's where you're at, it's like not a throwing shade or anything like that. But you can't move forward if you're living in self-pity, if you're living in victim mode, if you're living in everybody owes you something. You can't. And even if it's true, even if you were a victim of something, even if you there's a lot of sad stuff that's going on in your life and a lot of sad things happen to you. Those things are true. But if you're constantly living in that poor me, how come me, you'll always be there. You'll never move forward. Always. You'll have to accept what has happened, what has transpired. You have to accept your part in it. And you have to accept that you didn't have a part in some of that. Some of that was out of your control. Some of it was. And now, what do you want to do about it?
Exactly. You got to take, eventually you got to get down to that. You got to get down to that. So again, I really appreciate it. You kind of gave some hints of different things to do, but again, what advice, maybe somebody that's doing this work too, because a lot of people go in this work, they want to help people. And some think it's easy. Some know it's tough, right? I think the best counselors, the best people are somebody who has experienced trauma, no doubt. Experienced the same things so they could relate to you in some way. Even though I have met people who never lived any kind of bad life and they're just generally good people, and it surprises me. But at the same time, I'm jealous that they got to live their life and they didn't have to worry about none of this business.
Don't be jealous. Don't be jealous because you got, not only did they build resiliency and character, but your experience is the reason why we are working what we're doing right now, right? Now you are the light for somebody else, The
Creator gave me that ability at some point, but it was difficult not to be. And people sometimes, even in our situation, some people don't want to believe it. Like, oh, you're not really. Or I remember my homeboy asked me, he got out of prison. He asked me to give him a ride from this group that we were at, took him home. As I was taking him home, he was in this halfway house, he just got out. And he asked me, how good do you really have to be? Bro? Like, tell me the real deal. And I was like, if you want a good life, bro, you got to be good all the time. There's no halfway doing it because it only takes that one time for you to go back. Yes, that's, again, integrity, like you said, we refer to that as palabra. If you say your palabra, you're going to do something, then do it. Yeah. You know what I mean? And you got to have palabra to yourself, first of all. And that's important one. And then, in your story, I heard a lot of that.
And I'm going to say, I'm going to say something right now and because I'm a female and I want to feel sexy sometimes and stuff. I feel my sexiest, not when I'm dressed a certain way or look a certain way, but when I say something and I do it. When I do what I say I'm going to do, that's when I feel empowered. That's when I feel good. That's when I feel sexy. That's when I feel, damn, girl, got it going on. You're doing things,
What would you say to those young women, the 14-year-old you?
Ooh-wee, 14-year-old. Your worth and your deservingness of good doesn't lie in other people's opinions of you or other people's validation of you. Men, boys, your mom, your dad, your sisters, your brothers, anybody. You have to find a way to accept that you are deserving of everything, of all that is good. But you also have to accept that every decision you make, and that's even at, there was a time where I blamed myself so long for, I mentioned that I was raped, and I say that so callously because I'm kind of like, I'm in a state, in a place where I get that happened to me. I'm not a victim anymore. I'm a survivor. I moved on, and I don't want to live in that pain. I don't want to live there, right? So, but there was a long time where I felt that the decision I made to be in that place at that time was stupid, but I made it. And that was my part. I shouldn't have been there. I knew I shouldn't have been there. And there's going to be times in your life where you're making decisions and you're 14 now. Imagine you're 14 now. Like, you're not a little baby, you're not a little kid. And if you don't have, all these good role model or good example, then you're going to have to make decisions on your own. And you're going to have to live with the consequences. But you don't have to be a victim, and you're still deserving. You're still deserving. And you don't find that anywhere. You find that in here. You find that in your heart. You find that with a power greater, a force greater. For me, that's always been something that, I always used to say, I'm not, religious. I'm not this. I'm not that. I don't know what I am, because my higher power was the pipe. And now it's like there's just so much evidence of a power working in my life. There is just so much proof that when I ask, things are going to work out. There's just so much proof. So if you don't have somebody to talk to, if you don't have a religion, or you don't have a practice, or you don't have a therapist or a best friend or a mom, talk to God. And if you don't want to call God, call it whatever you want. But bring God, the power, the force, the light, the spirit into your life. Invite them into your life and ask for guidance and courage. And for all I know, that God is actually me just speaking my stuff into existence. For all I know, it might be a girl or a woman. For all I know, I don't know. I don't have the answers to this other force, right? All I know that for me, the evidence has been right in my face. It's been proven time and time again. And I choose to call mine God. It's just simple that way. I don't want to put any pressure on anybody to feel or think the way I do. I want it to work for you. I want it to empower you. I want it to light you so that you can be the model and the example to the next person, to your daughter, to your son, to your sister or mother. And I would say that if you're 14, be 14. But remember, every choice and everything you decide to do has consequences. If you can live with that, do your thing. Do your thing. But you're 14. You're going to one day be 50. And, think about it. I think about it all the time. Like, damn, I could have been a doctor by now. But, you know what I mean? And I think about it all the time. But again, I'm not going to live in that woulda, coulda, woulda, shoulda. I'm going to think about what I can do right now with the cup that I have, with the flow that I have. How can I do and be a part of something good, something greater than me? And that all starts with taking care of myself first.
Definitely. So again, I want to thank you. I appreciate your story, your frankness too, telling people how it is, and, the courage to share. A lot of times people, they, want to keep some of their struggle to themselves, but, there's medicine in that. So I want to thank you for being medicine for yourself, medicine for your family, and, your relationship, and continued blessing in that way. I want you to be good. And I'm really happy to work with you in this endeavor, supporting local organization, doing good things. It's tough. Helping people is tough. You have to be very deliberate and at the same time be open. We don't ever know where they're coming from, what they've endured in their lives. And the main thing is just to be there, be open, be blessing. So I just want to thank you again. I want to tell all the listeners too, if you found some good knowledge here, share about it. And if you have a story, maybe that you want to talk to me about, maybe you're doing something good in the community or somebody, reach out to us. I want you to go to the nationalcompadres.org website. We have lots of programming with young people, with adults, with community. And, it's a beautiful thing. I really appreciate the compadres and comadres, all the things, and what that literally means, we're co-parents. We're each other's keeper. When we say you heal, when you heal, we all heal. When Angela healed or is in this healing journey, we all benefit from that. So, I want to thank you again for being that mirror for us today. Despite all the trauma in our lives, we can still repair, harness. Maybe those scars are still there, but they get lessened over time. And, we need those reminders, and hopefully people can learn from that. So is there anything else you would like to share? Maybe if somebody, an organization or something you want to point people to?
Yeah, I don't have anything right now that I would like to point anybody to. But I just want to say, like this whole thing is a process. Like, I'm not claiming to have all the answers or have arrived. I'm not healed. I am healing. And, that still comes with, processing emotions and thoughts and still, thinking about old habits and old behaviors. But the thing that's different today is that I have a choice. I'm not handcuffed to the pipe. I'm not handcuffed to the behavior and the destruction that comes with that. So if you're struggling with addiction and you just need relief and you don't know how to get it, I'm asking you to ask the universe, and you'll be surprised. It might not come in the way that you are expecting it, but trust that help is coming and help is on its way. But every time it comes, you got to be open to it. Open up your heart, open up your mind to a new life. And I told Cisco not to be jealous of that person because that person only lived one life. Me and you got to live two. Two lives in one lifetime. And, that comes with a responsibility. That comes with accountability, but that comes with responsibility. And it's our responsibility now to be part of organizations that are pushing the way for healers, for leaders, especially in our culture, especially for our people. And I think that now that's where my head is. Like I went from that to this, and it's my responsibility now. God has said, okay, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you heal. I'm going to help you get better. I'm going to help you see a new perspective, a new light. But now it's your responsibility to light the way for other people.
I thank you so much again. I really appreciate it. Please share and like I always say, and, tune in for the next ones. We're going to come up with the special effort here called, I used to do a podcast called Hood Healers. I'm bringing it back for a short time. There's a lot of big things coming here, and I just want to share a little bit about that. Maybe the next time I'll kind of break some of those down, but, find healing wherever you could find it, Find healing within yourself, within your community. And remember that, there's 4 elements of this healing. I want to remind you each of that. There's the emotional, there's the mental, there's the physical, and there's also the spiritual. Sometimes when you're really wounded, it's your spirit that's hurt. And you need to take time and deal with that susto, deal with those pains and work on them. But that doesn't define you. That does not define you. Everybody, I believe, can heal. I mean, I've so many stories of that. So I just want to encourage each and every one of you. I'm burning a little cedar here. This cedar we burn represents that everlasting love. It's always green. That love, no matter what, it's still there. You know what I mean? It's still there. And most importantly, love yourself. Do what you can. Again, this is a Healing Generations podcast, the Elder Edition. Palabra.
Palabra.
For more information about Healing Generations and the Healing Generations Institute, visit nationalcompadresnetwork.org and be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with our new releases.